There is a story we've been told for as long as we've had maps. That civilization began in the Fertile Crescent. That progress flowed outward from Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley. And that before them, there was nothing but wilderness and wandering tribes. But what if that story is only half of the truth? What if the first pages of our history are not missing, but drowned? Imagine looking at a map of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, Vietnam. Now erase the ocean between them. Picture instead an immense subcontinent, rivers braiding through golden plains, jungles stretching unbroken from Sumatra to Borneo, a coastline that runs for thousands of miles. This was Sundaland, a landmass larger than India that once existed just 14,000 years ago. And then it vanished. Between 21,000 and 7,000 years ago, the Earth began to melt. The last ice age retreated, and the oceans rose 400 feet. The water moved slowly, but unstoppable. Every century, shorelines crept inland, valleys filled, islands broke apart. To us, it is geology. To those who lived there, it was the end of their world. Now, scientists estimate that as much as 2 million square kilometers of land in Southeast Asia, enough to hold entire nations, disappeared beneath the rising seas. That's not myth, that's measurement. And when you overlay that vanished world with where humans were already living, a haunting question appears. Could this have been one of the first great human heartlands? A cradle of civilization before civilization had a name. We've always looked west for our origins. Anthropology and archaeology have spent centuries tracing migrations out of Africa toward Europe and the Near East. Yet if you shift your gaze just a little toward the equator, toward the seas between the Indian and Pacific Oceans, you find something extraordinary. A region that was once perfectly placed to nurture early human expansion. Rich coastlines, predictable weather, endless rivers and estuaries teeming with life. In short, everything we would need to build the first networks, the first myths, the first sparks of culture. And yet today, almost no one talks about it, because all of it is underwater. The Sunda Shelf, that drowned landscape beneath modern Southeast Asia, is not a fantasy. It's a geological reality, mapped by sonar and satellites. Beneath the waves lie the ghost shapes of river systems, now traced in sediment. Scientists can see their branching patterns like veins under translucent skin, proof that what is now sea was once fertile land. But where there should be ruins or tools or hearths, there is silence. The ocean keeps its secrets well. And so the idea that Southeast Asia could have been an early cradle remains speculative, a beautiful, forbidden possibility, caught between science and imagination. Yet, sometimes the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, only a reminder of how little we've looked. The Earth remembers everything. Every glacier, every drought, every tide that crept across the continents. The planet keeps those stories written in stone, sand, and silence. But among the most dramatic of those stories is one that few people ever see, because its pages lie beneath the ocean. It is the story of a continent that drowned, not in myth, but in measurable geological fact. The story of Sundaland. 15,000 years ago, our world was a different place. The northern hemisphere still carried the weight of an ice age. Massive ice sheets pressed down on Canada, northern Europe, and Siberia. Sea levels were lower, not by a few feet, but by 400. That difference exposed entire continental shelves, revealing lands we no longer remember existed.
And in Southeast Asia, the effect was profound. Where today you see an archipelago of more than 17,000 islands, there was once one vast subcontinent. Sumatra, Java, and Borneo were not islands at all. They were mountain ranges within a continuous landmass that stretched from what is now Vietnam all the way to the edges of New Guinea. Scientists call this vanished world the Sunda Shelf, a continental extension of Asia that connected mainland Indochina with the islands we now know as Indonesia and Malaysia. Imagine standing at what is now Singapore and looking south. Instead of the endless ocean, you'd see a horizon of green, rolling plains, winding rivers, forests thick with life. Elephants, tigers, and rhinos roamed across what is now the Java Sea. Rivers flowed where the South China Sea sits today. It was not just land, it was alive. The evidence for this isn't speculation. Geologists have mapped it in exquisite detail, using satellite altimetry and sonar scanning to reconstruct the contours of the seabed. The data reveals entire river systems carved into the continental shelf. The Siam River system, once draining central Thailand and Cambodia. The North Sunda River, linking modern Sumatra and Borneo. The Malacca River system, stretching deep into what is now the Strait of Malacca. These were not trickles, they were mighty arteries, wide enough to rival the Mississippi or the Amazon. And along their banks, life flourished. If you looked at the planet from orbit during that time, you would see something startling. Southeast Asia wasn't a scattered cluster of islands, it was one of the largest continuous tropical landscapes on Earth. A single superpeninsula bridging two oceans, linking the great continents of Asia and Australasia. It was, quite literally, a crossroads of the world. And then, the ice began to melt. It didn't happen overnight. The end of the Ice Age was a slow revolution, set in motion by a tilt in Earth's axis and the return of warmth to the poles. But as those vast ice sheets collapsed, they released unimaginable volumes of water. The seas rose, not steadily, but in pulses. Scientists call them meltwater pulses, sudden surges of ocean height triggered by glacial collapse, sometimes raising sea level by dozens of feet within centuries. To the people living along those ancient coasts, it must have felt apocalyptic. Rivers widened into estuaries. Marshlands became bays. Villages were forced to move again and again as the water kept coming. The world they knew, fertile, abundant, and permanent, began to disappear one horizon at a time. The geological record tells us that between roughly 14,000 and 8,000 BCE, the Sunda Shelf transformed completely. The ocean advanced like an invading army. The lowlands between Sumatra and Borneo flooded first. Then the wide valleys connecting Java to the mainland vanished. Finally, the shallow plains of the South China Sea, once home to vast river deltas, sank beneath the waves. By 7,000 years ago, the map we know today had taken shape. A broken archipelago where a single subcontinent had once stood. What makes this story so haunting is its invisibility. We are accustomed to thinking of lost lands as legends, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. But this one is not imaginary. It is there, measurable, charted, and ignored. It is a geological Atlantis hiding in plain sight. And while the myths of other continents remain unproven, the drowned landscapes of Sundaland can be seen. Every contour, every ancient valley, lying quietly under 100 meters of warm, murky sea. If you could drain those waters even for an hour, the transformation would be staggering. Entire river basins would re-emerge, mountains would rejoin as one spine, and suddenly the civilizations we think of as island cultures would appear as neighbors on the same plane. But the story isn't only about geography. It's about what that geography might have meant for us. Because environments shape evolution, not just of species, but of societies. A vast, warm, fertile plain at the heart of the tropics would have been a magnet for human life. Archaeologists already know that humans reached Southeast Asia more than 60,000 years ago. They crossed through this region on their way to Australia, leaving traces in caves and mountains, tools, bones, pigments. If they were here then, they would have found the Sunda continent waiting, a paradise of resources, rivers, and coastlines. It is difficult to imagine that such a landscape would have remained empty or static for tens of millennia. And yet, our evidence is frustratingly thin. Why? Because everything those people built, everything they left behind on the coasts, now lies underwater. Archaeology has a preservation bias. It favors dry inland caves and deserts where artifacts can endure. Coastal sites, especially in tropical zones, vanish under waves and silt. The world's first ports, first boats, first settlements near deltas, they may have all been swallowed long before we learned to look for them. Still, small hints survive. In the caves of Borneo and Sulawesi, we find ancient art, stencils of human hands, hunting scenes painted at least 40,000 years ago, some of the oldest imagery on Earth. These are inland fragments of a much larger story, people already capable of expression, coordination, and creativity. If this was happening in the hills, what was happening on the coasts, where populations were denser and resources more abundant? The drowned continent doesn't just challenge our maps, it challenges our imagination. When we think of early humans, we often picture isolated tribes struggling to survive. But the Sunda world could have been something else entirely. A network of riverine communities, trading, traveling, and sharing knowledge along a vast tropical shelf. It's possible that the first real world humans knew, connected, diverse, and thriving, existed here long before the words civilization or history were even conceived. And then, the sea took it all back. There is a quiet power in realizing that every island in Southeast Asia, from Sumatra to Java, Borneo to Bali, is the peak of a mountain that once stood on that lost plain. When the waves rose, the mountains became islands, and the people who lived among them adapted. They built boats, followed the receding coasts, carried their stories with them, stories of floods, of lost lands, of gods angered by human pride. Stories that echo across the world even today. We don't have to look far to hear them. From the Malay Peninsula to the Pacific, flood myths repeat the same pattern. A great deluge, survivors on a mountain, a rebirth of the world. It's tempting to dismiss them as coincidence, but maybe, just maybe, they are cultural fossils, memories of the very events that drowned Sundaland. Modern science is beginning to piece this puzzle together. Researchers from Indonesia, Singapore, and the United Kingdom have used seismic surveys and sediment cores to trace ancient riverbeds beneath the Java Sea. They've found layers of peat and pollen, signs of once dry forests and freshwater marshes. Each sample is a whisper from a world that drowned slowly, century by century. The Sunda Shelf is more than a scientific curiosity. It's a reminder of how fragile civilization truly is and how much of our history remains hidden beneath the tide. In every other part of the world, we build our myths around mountains and deserts, things that endure. But here, the past lies underwater, soft and shifting and waiting to be rediscovered. So when we speak of the drowned continent, we are not speaking in metaphors. We are speaking of home, of the very ground our ancestors once walked, now buried beneath 100 meters of silence. A silence we are only beginning to break. Because as satellites trace forgotten rivers, we are hearing that world again. The heartbeat of a continent that never truly died. It is still there,
The map of Southeast Asia is deceptive. At first glance, it seems fragmented, a tangle of islands, channels, and seas. But if you peel back the water, it reveals itself for what it truly is, a living bridge between worlds. For millions of years, this region has been the meeting point of two great realms, Asia to the west, Australia and Oceania to the east, a boundary both visible and invisible. Scientists call it the Wallace Line, a frontier drawn not by politics or empires, but by nature itself. To the west of the line, the forests hum with the sounds of tigers, elephants, and orangutans, species that once ranged across the Asian mainland. To the east, the landscape changes abruptly. Marsupials replace primates. Birds flash in strange, vibrant colors. The DNA of life itself shifts, as if two different planets meet in one sea. This invisible barrier runs roughly between Bali and Lombok, slicing through the Indonesian archipelago. It is one of evolution's great borders, a place where land, sea, and time conspire to separate worlds. But while animals were divided, humans were not. Where evolution saw barriers, our ancestors saw corridors. The same seas that stopped tigers and elephants became the highways of human movement. Rafts, dugouts, and canoes turned the impossible into the inevitable. Tens of thousands of years ago, when sea levels were lower and distances shorter, people began to move through this labyrinth of islands, some from the west, others from the north, a few, perhaps, even from the east. Each group brought languages, tools, and genes that would mingle and merge across generations, shaping the incredible diversity of peoples that live here today. Archaeologists trace this story through artifacts scattered like breadcrumbs across the region. Stone tools in Sulawesi, pigments in Timor, bone points in Papua, and deeper still, in the DNA of modern Southeast Asians and Australians lies a genetic fingerprint of these ancient journeys, the traces of Denisovans, a mysterious human lineage that once interbred with early Homo sapiens somewhere in this very region. It's as if the islands themselves were witnesses to a meeting between species, one that changed the genetic future of humanity. The Wallace Line was not a wall. It was a threshold, one that demanded courage, imagination, and ingenuity to cross. The water between Bali and Lombok may not look far, just a few dozen miles, but for Ice Age humans, with nothing more than wraths and hope, it was an odyssey. To make that journey, they had to look out over an open horizon and believe that something, anything, existed beyond it. That act alone, to trust the unknown sea, marks one of the earliest signs of human curiosity as technology. Because curiosity, too, is a form of invention. And once they learned to travel by water, the world opened like a book. They could move along coasts, follow currents, trace the flight of birds and the drift of seeds. The ocean was no longer a barrier, it was a map, and those who could read it were free. We often imagine prehistory as static, tribes fixed in place, bound to the soil they lived on. But here, in the island corridors of Southeast Asia, movement was life. People adapted to changing tides, built seasonal camps along estuaries, and learned to navigate by stars long before written language existed. They understood the moon's rhythm, the way tides breathe in and out, the color of water that hints at shallow reefs. Every journey was a calculation, a memory passed through generations. We may never know their names, but their legacy is written in every modern coastline. Because their paths became the veins of human migration, the arteries that connected Asia to Australia, the Pacific, and beyond. These were the corridors of humanity. The Wallace Line may have defined biology, but humans drew their own map, a mental geography of routes, winds, and stories. Over millennia, those corridors turned into cultures, and though the sea level rise fragmented them into islands, the memory of connection never disappeared. Even today, echoes of that shared past remain. Across Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Papua, languages share deep-rooted similarities, common words for water, boat, fire, and sky. Ancient myths describe journeys across shining seas, guided by stars and spirits. These are not just legends, they're memories, wrapped in poetry, surviving from a time when the ocean was a familiar road. It's difficult to grasp just how early this maritime genius began. The evidence from Australia shows humans were already crossing open seas more than 50,000 years ago. That means people here, in the Sunda and Sahul regions, were among the first navigators in human history. Before the wheel, before writing, before cities. We built boats, and what's even more astonishing, we kept going. From the Sunda Plains, early humans reached the islands of Wallacea. From there, they continued eastward toward the Sahul Shelf, which once connected Australia and New Guinea. The path they took, from mainland Asia across the drowned bridges of Sunda to the forests of Sahul, remains one of the longest and most extraordinary migrations our species ever undertook, all without compasses, maps, or metal. Just courage, wind, and memory. Picture that moment, a small raft made of bamboo or palm trunks, bound by vines, creaking as it drifts into a dawn mist. Behind, a fading coastline. Ahead, an ocean alive with light. Somewhere out there, unseen but sensed, another shore waits. That's not just travel, that's faith. When people reached the Sahul lands, now Australia and New Guinea, they carried fragments of their homeland with them, languages, traditions, perhaps even memories of the great shelf they had left behind. And as they adapted to new environments, those memories became myths, origin stories of gods who separated land and sea, of islands born from drowned mountains. The geography of Southeast Asia wrote itself into the psychology of its people. It made them travelers. It made them storytellers. Even today, the ocean remains central to identity here. For the Bajau people of Borneo, often called sea nomads, the water is home. They dive to depths that challenge science, holding their breath for minutes at a time, fishing with handmade spears. Their bodies have adapted, their spleens larger than most humans, their lungs trained by centuries of life at sea. They are a living echo of what it means to belong to a maritime world. But beyond the poetry, there is data, genetic, linguistic, archaeological, all pointing to one truth. The story of humanity's spread cannot be told without Southeast Asia. The corridors between Sunda and Sahul were not side routes, they were the routes, the arteries through which people, ideas, and genes flowed for tens of millennia. And yet, most textbooks barely mention them. We speak of Mesopotamia, of Egypt, of the Silk Road, but not of the island highways that predated them all. Perhaps it's because the evidence is hidden underwater. Perhaps it's because the Western imagination has always looked towards deserts and stones, not towards waves and tides. But here, in the drowned corridors of the ancient world, lies the missing chapter of our mobility, proof that long before we built roads, we built routes through water. As sea levels rose, those corridors narrowed. Passages that were once rivers became straits, deltas became bays, and as the ocean took more, the connections frayed. What was once a single continental network broke into archipelagos, and each fragment began to evolve its own language, culture, and rhythm. But deep beneath the differences, the pulse remained the same, the ancient rhythm of movement, adaptation, and trade. It's poetic to think that the same currents our ancestors once followed are still flowing today, through the Malacca Strait, the Java Sea, the Banda Arc, carrying ships, data cables, and ideas in a continuity that spans tens of thousands of years. The ocean remembers its travelers even when we forget. Because, in the end, the Wallace Line doesn't separate us, it defines us. It is the reminder that humanity is...
If the coasts were erased, the mountains remember. When the sea took the lowlands, the highlands remained, silent, watchful, and eternal. And hidden within their shadows are the last refuges of the people who once walked the drowned plains. Caves. Dark, echoing, timeless. The only places where the past still breathes. Across Southeast Asia, these caves stand like archives of humanity, each one a sealed chamber of memory. They hold the ashes of the dead, the soot of ancient fires, the faint outlines of hands pressed against stone. And when we enter them, it feels less like discovery and more like recognition. Let's begin in Borneo, deep within the rainforests of Sarawak. Here lies Nia Cave, vast enough to swallow cathedrals, its limestone arches rising like the ribs of the earth itself. Archaeologists working here found one of the oldest human remains ever uncovered in Southeast Asia, a skeleton nearly 40,000 years old, buried with deliberate care. Next to it were tools, pigments, fragments of ochre. Traces not just of survival, but of expression. The person buried here wasn't an animal surviving in the wild. They were human, capable of art, of ritual, of remembrance. When scientists analyzed the sediments around the skeleton, they found evidence of continuous human presence stretching back tens of thousands of years. That means people were living, eating, and dying here while the Sunda Plains still stretched far into what's now the South China Sea. Nia was not a frontier. It was a home, a doorway between the drowned world and the surviving one. Travel east, and the story becomes stranger. On the island of Flores, in a cave called Liang Bua, excavators in 2003 uncovered a discovery that shook anthropology. A nearly complete skeleton of a tiny human species standing just over a meter tall. They called her Homo floresiensis, or more famously, the Hobbit. Her skull was small, her limbs delicate, her tools simple, but unmistakably human. She and her kind lived here for at least 50,000 years ago, long after our species had spread across the region. No one knows exactly how these miniature humans evolved. Some believe they were descendants of Homo erectus, isolated on the island and shaped by the evolutionary pressures of limited resources, a phenomenon called island dwarfism. Others think they might represent a separate branch of humanity entirely. Whatever the answer, their existence proves something profound. That this region, the island labyrinth between Sunda and Sahul, wasn't a footnote of human history. It was a crucible of evolution, a workshop where nature kept experimenting with what it meant to be human. Just north of there, on Luzon in the Philippines, another surprise waited. In Calao Cave, researchers found the bones of yet another ancient human species, Homo luzonensis. Small-bodied, with a mosaic of features never seen before, these people lived more than 67,000 years ago. That makes them older than the Hobbit, older than any known humans in East Asia at the time.
It suggests that Southeast Asia wasn't just a crossroads. It was a mosaic, a place where different kinds of humans coexisted, evolved, and perhaps even met. Think about that for a moment. In this region alone, at least 4 species of humans once shared the same world: Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, Homo luzonensis, and Homo sapiens. Each one adapted to its own island, its own rhythm of survival. Each one watched the sea rise, forests change, animals migrate. And eventually, one species, ours, carried their memory forward, maybe through genes, maybe through story. Further south, on the island of Sulawesi, lies another kind of evidence, one not made of bone, but of imagination. Inside the caves of Maros and Punkip are paintings, ancient, fragile, and breathtaking. They show hand stencils, wild animals, hunting scenes. One panel dated to over 45,000 years ago depicts a group of small figures chasing what looks like a wild boar. It's the oldest known narrative scene in the world, older than the art of Europe, older than Lascaux or Altamira. Here in the humid darkness of Sulawesi, humans told their first stories in color. When the archaeologists first illuminated these walls, they were stunned. The red ochre glowed like fresh blood under their lamps, and as they measured the mineral layers covering the paint, the age refused to align with expectation. It meant that symbolic thought, the ability to imagine, to represent, to create meaning, didn't bloom only in Europe, as once thought. It bloomed everywhere. And Southeast Asia was one of its earliest gardens. But who were these painters? Were they our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, or some now lost branch of humanity? No one knows. The caves guard their answers closely. Yet their message is universal. Human imagination, it seems, is as old as fear and fire. Each of these sites, Nia, Liangbua, Kalau, and Sulawesi, is a fragment of a vast, unfinished puzzle. Together, they paint a picture of a region far more ancient, complex, and interconnected than we ever imagined. A place where multiple human lineages overlapped, adapted, and disappeared, leaving only whispers in stone. When you walk through those caves today, you feel time differently. Your breath mixes with air that hasn't moved in millennia. Drips echo like slow heartbeats. You begin to sense that these weren't just shelters from rain or predators. They were sanctuaries of memory. Places where humans came to mark their existence against eternity. In the flickering light of a torch, a hand pressed against stone becomes more than art. It becomes a declaration, I was here. A promise from one consciousness to another, from 40,000 years, that humanity endures. If we think of the drowned coasts as the cradle of civilization, then the caves are its memory. They are the echoes that survived the flood. Every pigment, every burial, every carving reminds us that the story of Southeast Asia isn't just about lost lands, it's about people who refuse to be lost. And yet, for all the beauty and wonder, there's a haunting silence in these places. Many of the caves are deteriorating, threatened by humidity, pollution, or neglect. Some paintings fade with every breath of modern air that enters the cave. Others are being reclaimed by nature, lichens growing over the ancient ochre, erasing what once was. If we don't act soon, these windows into humanity's dawn will vanish again, this time not to water, but to time. In a sense, that's fitting, because the story of humanity in Southeast Asia has always been about survival against impermanence, against the sea, against extinction, against forgetting. Each generation loses something, but each one also leaves a mark. In Nia, a burial. In Flores, a skeleton. In Sulawesi, a painted dream. Together, they are a chorus of presence, singing through the noise of extinction and erosion. And maybe that's the real message of these caves, that even when continents drown and species vanish and the tide erases our footprints, the human urge to remember, to leave a trace, endures. It's in our bones. It's in our art. It's in the very act of telling stories like this one. So when we speak of people in caves, we're not talking about primitive creatures hiding from the world. We're talking about the first historians, the first artists, the first dreamers who looked at a stone wall and saw eternity. The caves remember them. And through them, we remember ourselves.
Beneath every story we tell about ourselves, there are other stories written not in ink but in blood. Invisible lines looping through time, connecting one generation to the next. They are our genes, and whether we like it or not, they remember more than we ever could. For decades, scientists believed the human migration story was simple, elegant even. A single path, out of Africa, through the Middle East, spreading east and west like ink in water. But Southeast Asia never fit that neat diagram. It was too complex, too diverse, too tangled in time. Here, genes swirl and weave like the ocean currents themselves. To study them is to look into a mirror made of water, the reflection always shifting, never still. When geneticists began mapping modern populations across Asia and Oceania, they expected to find clear linear ancestry, neat branches of a family tree. Instead, they found a web, intricate, overlapping, ancient beyond prediction. A web that stretches back not tens, but hundreds of thousands of years. One of the most haunting discoveries came from the mountains of Papua and the islands of Indonesia. Hidden in the DNA of these people are traces of another species, not Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals, but something else, something older. We call them Denisovans. For a long time, Denisovans were ghosts, known only from a single finger bone found in a cave in Siberia. But their legacy lives here, thousands of miles away, in the blood of modern islanders. That means somewhere in this region, long ago, our ancestors met them and mingled. The implication is staggering. The people of Southeast Asia carry within them the genetic memory of encounters that mainstream history doesn't record. These weren't isolated wanderers on the edge of the world. They were participants in an ancient network of contact, migration, and exchange. It suggests that this region wasn't just a corridor humans passed through, it was a crucible, a meeting ground where different forms of humanity intertwined. Somewhere on the lost plains of Sunda or the forests of Wallacea, those meetings happened, not as legends, but as life, a handshake across species lines. And through it, something new was born, us, but changed. Every breath we take carries the echo of that encounter. Yet genes tell only half the story. The other half lives in the sound of our voices, in language, the architecture of thought. And here too, Southeast Asia holds a mystery. Across this vast mosaic of islands and peninsulas, linguists have found connections so deep they defy geography. From Taiwan to Madagascar, from the Philippines to Easter Island, echoes of the same linguistic family stretch like invisible threads. It's called the Austronesian family, the largest on Earth, spanning half the planet, and its roots begin here. Somewhere in this region, thousands of years ago, a people mastered the art of the ocean. They built outriggers and sails, learned the language of the wind, and spread outward, carrying not only their genes, but their words. Words for water, for sky, for boat, for home. Simple, universal things. They sailed east to Polynesia, west to Africa, and north to Taiwan. And everywhere they went, they left behind the rhythm of a shared tongue.
But the Austronesian expansion wasn't the first story, only the most recent wave of a much older tide. Before them, before recorded history, there were older languages, lost families of speech that once linked Sunda's coasts. Today, only fragments survive. A root word shared between two distant islands, a phoneme that shouldn't exist in both places but does. Linguists call these substrate echoes, remnants of forgotten tongues washed up in modern speech like shells on a beach. When you listen carefully to the languages of this region, you hear those echoes. Everywhere. Malay and Tagalog share ancient words for boat parts that have no cognates elsewhere. In Papua and eastern Indonesia, certain verbs describing wind and current show patterns that seem to predate Austronesian influence entirely. Even place names whisper of continuity. Repeated roots for river, island, sun, found across distances too great for coincidence. What this suggests is extraordinary. Before the world drowned, there may have been a shared linguistic zone, a Sunda speech world, sprawling across a land mass that no longer exists. Its words would have traveled by trade and story just as they do today. And when the sea rose, those words became the lifeboats of memory, floating on into new tongues long after their speakers were gone. The genetic and linguistic evidence point to the same truth: connection. While the rest of the world was fragmented by deserts, ice, and distance, Southeast Asia was united by water. It wasn't a barrier, it was a bridge. And on that bridge, humans met, mingled, and made meaning. This region also challenges the way we think about origin. There's a tendency in science to look for single cradles, one birthplace for humanity, one source for innovation. But the more we learn, the less the world seems to work that way. Evolution, culture, and civilization are not sparks that ignite once. They are fires that catch wherever the conditions allow. And in the warm, fertile, water-linked world of Sunda, those conditions were perfect. Perhaps it's no accident that so many Southeast Asian myths describe humans as children of both land and sea, born from foam, clay, or tide. In Indonesia, one story tells of the first people rising from the ocean's breath, their souls carried by waves. In the Philippines, creation begins with a quarrel between the sky and the sea, whose union forms the islands. In Malaysia, the spirits of mountains are said to be the ancestors of those who refused to leave when the waters rose. Even in language, that duality persists, the same word often meaning both life and water. Genes, languages, myths, each is a form of inheritance, and each tells us something science alone cannot. Together, they reveal that Southeast Asia is not a periphery, but a pulse, a rhythmic center in humanity's global heartbeat. What's fascinating is how these lines, genetic, linguistic, cultural, mirror one another. Where the Denisovan traces fade, Austronesian words pick up. Where the words vanish, myths take over. It's as if human memory, refusing to vanish, keeps rewriting itself in new forms. The Austronesian migration, for example, didn't simply scatter people, it connected them. Across thousands of islands, communities shared technologies, crop cultivation, navigation by stars, oral calendars based on the moon. Those traditions endure. Even today, Polynesian navigators can cross the Pacific using only stars, currents, and the color of the waves. An unbroken skill passed through generations whose roots may reach back to those first Sunda mariners who watched their homeland drown. Science often speaks in terms of data, in genes and percentages, in linguistic cognates and migration graphs. But beneath the numbers, there's something poetic. The recognition that we, as a species, carry not only the map of our movements, but the music of our origins. Each of us is a chord struck long ago on a coastline that no longer exists.
So when geneticists extract DNA from an ancient tooth in a cave, or when linguists trace the evolution of a single word across 10,000 miles, they're doing more than research. They're listening for resonance, the low hum of connection that binds us all. And that hum still vibrates strongest here, between the drowned plains and island peaks of Southeast Asia. The genes, the words, the myths, they all point back to the same invisible shore, a place that no one remembers, yet everyone carries within them, a homeland beneath the sea. Perhaps that's why the people of this region speak of the ocean not as an enemy, but as family. They call it Ibu Laut, Mother Sea, because in some sense she is. She took their land, but left them the world. She drowned their past, but gave them a destiny, to sail, to explore, to spread across the globe, carrying the whispers of what was lost. And as science catches up with story, the pattern becomes clear. We are not separate civilizations. We are waves of the same tide, genes and words flowing endlessly between shores. Listen closely, and you can almost hear it. The echo of a voice from long ago saying across millennia, "We were here, we still are, and the sea remembers our names."
Long before there were maps, there were stories. Before compasses, there were stars. And before history was written in books, it was carved into memory, whispered by fires, sung over waves, and told again each time the sea rose a little higher. Every civilization on Earth has a story of a great flood, a storm that raged for 40 days, a sea that swallowed the land, a god who punished, a mountain that saved, a few who survived. To the modern mind, these are myths, metaphors, morality tales. But to those who remember through story, myth is not fiction. It is memory, transformed by time. In Southeast Asia, those memories are everywhere. In the jungles of Borneo, the elders speak of a time when the ocean lay far away and the land stretched beyond the horizon. They tell of a world so vast that hunters could walk for months without seeing the sea, until one day the waters began to rise, first slowly, then relentlessly. Villages fled to the hills, carrying their fire with them, and when they looked back, the plains where their ancestors had hunted were gone, replaced by shimmering blue. They call it Tanah yang Hilang, the lost land. Across the Java Sea, in Sumatra, another tale survives. The people of the Minangkabau speak of Bundo Kandwang, the mother of all life, who angered the gods with her pride. In response, the sea rose and drowned her empire. But from her tears came the mountains, the peaks that still rise above the clouds today. In this myth, the flood is not just punishment, it is transformation, a reminder that destruction is also rebirth. Travel north, and the same theme appears again and again. In the Philippines, the Visayan creation story begins with the sky god Kaptan and the sea goddess Magwayan. Their love and conflict gave birth to the islands. But when humanity grew arrogant, the ocean reclaimed what it had once given. Only a handful of people survived, those who climbed to the highest peaks. In their legend, the mountains are sacred because they were once the only dry land left in the world. And in Malaysia, an ancient tale tells of Gunung Ledang, the mountain of the fairy queen. According to the myth, the mountain stands as the last refuge of a kingdom that once ruled the plains, now drowned beneath the straits of Malacca. It is said that at low tide, if you listen closely, you can still hear bells ringing under the waves, the echoes of a city that refused to die. From Indonesia to Vietnam, from the Andaman Islands to the coast of Papua, the pattern repeats. Floods, survival, renewal. Different tongues, same rhythm. It's as though every culture is remembering the same event through its own dream. Scientists might call these coincidences or psychological archetypes, a universal human fear of water's power. But what if they are more than that? What if they are the oral fossils of real events, the way ancient peoples preserved their history when there was no paper, no alphabet, no archive? In that sense, myth is not superstition. It is data, encoded in story. When anthropologists began cataloging flood myths globally, they found something striking. There are over 500 versions, from the Mesopotamian tale of Utnapishtim to the biblical Noah, to the Hindu Manu, to the Aboriginal story of the drowning plains. But the densest cluster, the greatest diversity of flood stories per square mile, is here, in island Southeast Asia. Why? Because this was ground zero of the Great Melt. Because here the water really did rise. Between 14,000 and 7,000 years ago, as the Ice Age ended, the sea climbed 120 meters. That's not myth, that's measurement. And every meter of that rise erased lives, villages, entire ecosystems. Imagine the trauma of watching your homeland disappear, not in a day, but across generations. Imagine telling your children, the sea is coming, and having them watch it happen. Now, imagine what story you would tell centuries later, when all you had left was memory. Would you not speak of gods and punishment, of pride and loss? Would you not turn grief into legend so it would never be forgotten? That is what myth is, grief encoded as poetry. The memory of disaster carried across millennia, reshaped, moralized, but true at its core. Our ancestors did not have satellites or climate data, but they had stories, and those stories were their science. They mapped time through myth and myth through time. One of the most haunting examples comes from the Orang Laut, the sea people of the Riau archipelago. They speak of Batu Girondong, a sacred rock that once stood far inland, marking the heart of their ancestors' territory. Today, that rock lies beneath the sea, visible only at low tide. They call it the stone that walked away. Every generation sails there to pour offerings into the water, a ritual remembrance of the land they lost. No written record could last that long, but the story endures, alive in ritual, in motion, in the salt of the sea. Even in the Pacific, far beyond the limits of ancient Sunda, the echo continues. Polynesian legends tell of islands swallowed by waves, of voyagers who fled the rising ocean to find new lands. They speak of Hawaii, the ancestral homeland beneath the sea, the place from which all journeys began. Scholars debate its location, but its emotional truth is universal. Home is not where you stand, but what you carry with you when the tide takes everything else away. This is how myths work. They are not lies. They are truths wrapped in dream cloth, the only form of memory that can survive the flood. Modern research now begins to validate what the ancients already knew. Geologists studying submerged landscapes on the Sundaland shelf have found evidence of sudden, catastrophic flooding events, localized meltwater surges that could have destroyed whole coastlines within a few lifetimes. To the people living there, it would have felt divine. No science, no explanation, only the sound of the sea rising faster than the mind could comprehend. And so, they did what humans do best. They told a story. In that sense, every myth of a flood is not just about water. It's about adaptation. It's about the moment when humanity realized the world changes and that we must change with it. Perhaps that's why these stories are so persistent, because even now, in our modern world of satellites and skyscrapers, the flood is coming again. Not from gods, but from us. The seas are rising, the coastlines are shifting, and once again, people will have to move, to adapt, to remember. Maybe the old stories are not warnings of the past, but instructions for the future. Listen to the rhythm in them. Hubris, flood, humility, renewal. A cycle that mirrors the heartbeat of the planet. The sea gives, the sea takes, the sea gives again. It's not punishment, it's the oldest law of Earth. So, when the villagers of Borneo speak of Tanah Yang Hilang, or when the Filipinos pray to Magwayan, or when a sailor pours water over Batu Gerondong, they are not clinging to superstition. They are doing what humanity has always done, remembering through story, holding on to the truth that even when the world ends, we endure through the telling. And maybe that's why these myths still move us. Because deep down,
If the coasts of Sundaland were the cradle of our beginnings, then somewhere beneath those warm, shallow seas, there may still lie the traces of the first cities that never had a name. It's a thought both thrilling and terrifying, that human civilization might have bloomed, quietly and briefly, on land we can no longer see. Not with skyscrapers or kings or armies, but with the first true sense of belonging, communities bound by water, trade, and shared memory. Archaeology, by its nature, deals in fragments. A pot here, a hearth there, clues from which we build entire worlds. But what happens when the evidence lies beneath 100 meters of sea? We can't dig it. We can only imagine it, carefully, scientifically, humbly. Still, the imagination has a way of finding structure. Using sonar data, paleogeography, and sediment analysis, scientists have begun to reconstruct what the Sunda landscape looked like between 14,000 and 10,000 BCE, the golden window between the Ice Age and the final Great Floods. And the picture that emerges is extraordinary. Stretching from the Gulf of Thailand to Java and Borneo was an immense network of rivers, wide, winding, full of life. Where they met the sea, vast deltas spread out into fertile wetlands. These were the estuaries, the ancient meeting grounds of human existence. And along their edges, it's possible, perhaps even likely, that early humans began to build something more than camps, something enduring. The data suggests at least 3 major regions that could have supported such proto-centers of human life, not cities as we know them, but settlements dense and stable enough to seed culture,
innovation, and exchange. The first is the Malacca Estuarine Corridor. Once a vast river plain connecting Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula, today it's the narrow Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. But 12,000 years ago, it was a broad valley lined with freshwater deltas, lakes, and mangroves, a paradise of fish, fruit, and clay, the perfect environment for early villages to flourish. It's easy to picture small communities there, weaving reeds into boats, firing the first pottery, trading shells and pigments with neighbors upstream. Not a city of stone, but a network of life. The second candidate lies farther east, beneath the Java Sea Basin. Sonar mapping has revealed drowned terraces and paleo rivers branching like veins beneath the sea. Some researchers believe this area once formed the heart of a low-lying delta system, one of the largest wetlands in the prehistoric world. It may have hosted early coastal settlements, transient at first, but increasingly permanent as generations adapted to the rhythm of the tides. Here, humans could have learned to live with the sea rather than against it, developing a culture both terrestrial and aquatic. It's a pattern we still see today in the stilt villages of Indonesia, the Bajau nomads of the Sulus, the water markets of the Mekong. Echoes, perhaps, of a way of life that began long before history began to write itself. The third lies north, the South China Shelf, stretching between Vietnam, Borneo, and the Philippines. During the late Pleistocene, it was a broad coastal plain crossed by great rivers that emptied into a gulf that no longer exists. Satellite and seismic data show ancient channels, long, meandering scars now buried under silt, evidence of a landscape once rich with fresh water and forest. Somewhere along those banks, there may have been communities that traded obsidian or crafted early tools. If such a place existed, it would have been a natural hub, a crossroads between mainland Asia and the islands beyond. Together, these regions form a triangle, the Sunda Triangle as some geologists call it, a drowned network of deltas and estuaries, fertile enough to support millions, connected by rivers and surrounded by a sea that had not yet claimed them. A world where the concept of island did not exist, only shores that met more shores. Imagine that world at dusk, low fires flickering along a vast riverbank, the scent of wet clay and salt, children chasing crabs in the shallows, women weaving mats, men carving canoes, the murmur of 100 voices carried on the evening tide. That sound, human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human,
rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless, might have been the first true hum of civilization, of human, rhythmic, timeless.
The search for origins is never quiet. Wherever evidence fades, imagination rushes in. And in the silence left by the drowned lands of Sunda, that imagination has found fertile ground. For decades, scholars and dreamers alike have wondered if the stories of a forgotten civilization, one that rose before history, might hold a grain of truth. And nowhere does that question burn brighter than at a small hill in West Java, Indonesia, called Gunung Padang. From a distance, Gunung Padang looks ordinary, a green ridge rising gently out of coffee plantations and mist. But climb its slope, and you find something uncanny. Terraces made of massive stone blocks, stacked in patterns too regular to be random. Some stones are shaped, some aligned to cardinal directions, others arranged in long parallel lines. The entire hill feels alive, humming with geometry. Local legend calls it the Mountain of Enlightenment, a sacred place that predates even memory.
For centuries, villagers believed it was built by the ancient kings of Sunda, but modern researchers began to suspect it might be far older, perhaps much older. In 2011, an Indonesian geologist named Danny Hilman Natawijaya led a team to investigate. They used ground-penetrating radar, seismic tomography, and core drilling to peer beneath the surface. What they found stunned them. Under the visible terraces lay layer upon layer of stonework, buried chambers, platforms, and structures reaching more than 20 meters deep. Each layer appeared older than the one above it, and when they dated samples of organic material trapped within the stone matrix, some returned results as old as 20,000 to 25,000 years. If true, that would make Gunung Padang the oldest known megalithic site on Earth, twice as old as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, 10 times older than the pyramids of Egypt. It would also mean that an advanced, organized culture capable of large-scale architecture existed here during the final centuries of the Ice Age, precisely when the Sunda Plains still stretched far into the sea. In other words, Gunung Padang might be the last visible tip of that drowned world. The claim electrified Indonesia. It was a story that resonated deeply, a national pride rediscovered, a sense that civilization might have begun not in Mesopotamia or the Mediterranean, but here, on their own soil. Headlines proclaimed the world's oldest pyramid found in West Java. For many, it was vindication, proof that the forgotten lands of the East had once led the dawn of humanity. But in science, every revelation demands resistance, and the backlash came swiftly. Archaeologists and geologists from across the world questioned the findings. They pointed out that volcanic hills can naturally form terraces as lava cools and fractures. The walls and chambers, they argued, might simply be natural rock columns, the same kind that formed the Giant's Causeway in Ireland or Devil's Tower in Wyoming. Even the radiocarbon dates, they noted, came from organic material found in cracks, not from the stone itself, meaning the samples could have come from later intrusions, roots, or groundwater contamination. To the critics, Gunung Padang is fascinating, but not revolutionary. A natural hill modified by humans, perhaps 5,000 years ago. Impressive, but not epic-shattering. To the believers, it's the smoking gun of a lost civilization. And between these poles, the debate rages. Yet somewhere in that tension lies something more interesting than either certainty or disbelief. The process of how we decide what counts as truth. Scientific skepticism is not cynicism. It is the discipline of patience, the refusal to draw conclusions before evidence demands them. But wonder has its place too. Without wonder, we would never look beyond what we already know. Gunung Padang, for all its controversy, has reignited curiosity, forcing mainstream science to look again at the possibilities buried beneath Southeast Asia. Because it's not the only site that whispers of something older. Across the region, isolated anomalies keep surfacing. In Sulawesi, near Lake Matano, stone arrangements dot the hills, megalithic circles whose age remains uncertain. In the Philippines, the Ongono petroglyphs, more than 120 rock carvings of humans and animals, have been dated to at least 5,000 years ago, but may be far older. On the island of Sumba, giant megalithic tombs still rise above the grass, carved from stone so heavy it would challenge modern cranes. In Malaysia, submerged stone blocks found near the coast of Kedah have sparked debate over a site locals call Lembah Bujang, the Valley of the Dead, where ruins may predate Hindu influence by thousands of years. Individually, each find can be explained. Collectively, they form a pattern.
one that hints at a deep tradition of monumental building long before written history reached this part of the world. Perhaps these are not the relics of a single lost empire, but the fingerprints of a shared instinct, the human urge to mark permanence in a world that refuses to stay still. The flood may have erased the cities, but it could not erase the idea of building, the need to anchor meaning in stone. When we step back, what emerges is not a conspiracy, but a possibility. That early Southeast Asian societies were far more organized, far more connected than our current timeline allows. They may not have built pyramids that reached the sky, but they built networks, rituals, and myths that reached across generations. And some of those, fossilized in story and landscape, are resurfacing now. For some researchers, this conversation echoes an older debate, the tension between evidence and intuition. Science is built on what we can measure, but discovery often begins with what we can imagine. Without imagination, no one would have looked for Troy, or for Göbekli Tepe, or for the first fossils of ancient humans. Each of those once lived in the same category as Gunung Padang, too extraordinary to be true. And yet, some of them were true. The real challenge, then, is not choosing sides, but holding the paradox that our knowledge must stay open even when our data feels complete. To remember that impossible is often just a word we use for what we haven't yet found. Still, caution matters. Pseudo-archaeology, conspiracy, and nationalism can twist legitimate questions into weapons. The line between curiosity and mythology is thin and easily crossed. That's why the discipline of skepticism is sacred, not to suppress wonder, but to protect it from distortion. Gunung Padang deserves both admiration and rigor, both passion and proof. In the end, perhaps the most powerful thing about these contested sites is not whether they are real or misread, but what they reveal about us. Our hunger to belong to something ancient, our yearning for roots deeper than recorded time. Every culture seeks a story of beginning. For Southeast Asia, that story has long been drowned beneath other people's narratives. Gunung Padang, true or not, gives the region permission to imagine its own antiquity again. Maybe that's the deeper truth of the site, not geological, but psychological. A reminder that the human spirit is archaeological by nature. We dig because we remember, even when we don't know what we've lost. And if we allow ourselves to stand between skepticism and wonder, on that narrow ridge between data and dream, we might discover that the real value of places like Gunung Padang is not in their age, but in their invitation. They invite us to look, to question, to listen to the ground, to ask once more, what if the first chapters of us are still buried just beneath our feet? Science will decide in time. Cores will be drilled, samples dated, evidence weighed, but the mystery will remain, not as fantasy, but as motivation. Because every generation needs its frontier, and for ours, that frontier lies not in the stars, but in the seabed, in the soil, in the silent stone of hills like Gunung Padang. As the camera drifts back from the terraces, mist curling over basalt columns, a line of sunlight catches the stones. They glow faintly, gold and green, like embers refusing to die.
Close your eyes. Erase the oceans between the islands. Let the water retreat, the coasts breathe, and the land reconnect. Now, imagine that the flood never came. The year is 12,000 BCE. In our world, the age of ice and rising seas. But in this timeline, the climate is gentle. The melt slows. The rivers of Sunda
remain within their banks. And what we call Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines are not islands at all. They're one vast green continent, a single pulse of rainforest and river stretching from Burma to New Guinea. In this world, Sundaland never drowns. It thrives. Picture its deltas from the sky, glimmering arteries of water where mangrove forests curl around lagoons and channels. Villages cluster along the shorelines, smoke rising from clay hearths. Trade routes follow the rivers, not for conquest, but for exchange. Shells for obsidian, rice for salt, stories for song. The ocean is not a frontier, it is a garden. And humanity, young and fearless, begins to cultivate the idea of permanence. Without the flood to erase them, the proto-centers of the Sunda Shelf grow into the first true cities of the tropics. They are not built of stone or bronze, but of bamboo, coral, and timber, materials alive with the humidity of life. Their beauty is not in endurance, but in renewal. Houses are rebuilt with each generation, each layer recording the rhythm of ancestry. Cultural memory is woven, not carved. The people of this alternate Sunda are scientists of the senses. They map the stars reflected in water, discovering that the heavens and the tides share the same cycles. They invent calendars not of kings, but of moonlight and monsoon. Their temples are astronomical, open-roofed circles of posts that align with the solstice, echoing the structure of later observatories like Stonehenge. Only here, the alignments are tropical, measuring the zenith sun and the heartbeat of the sea. As agriculture emerges across the world, the Sunda peoples domesticate the wetlands. They tame rice long before the Chinese plains bloom. They breed yams, bananas, and taro, creating the first tropical food web sustainable across seasons. Their knowledge spreads through coastal trade, carried by canoes that skim along the mirror-flat lagoons. By 10,000 BCE, the Sunda Confederacy, not an empire, but a loose federation of river cultures, dominates the Indo-Pacific Rim. From the Andaman Islands to New Guinea, a chain of harbors glows by firelight. They speak hundreds of dialects, but share one root, the old Sunda tongue, ancestor to 1,000 future languages. And then, something happens that in our world came much later. They look outward. While Mesopotamia is still mud and marsh, the Sunda navigators push east into the Pacific. Their double-hulled ships, light but strong, ride the trade winds for weeks. They discover chains of islands, the Solomons, Fiji, Samoa, and leave small colonies, each tied by kinship and current. By 8,000 BCE, their maps include coastlines the rest of humanity won't see for another 9 millennia. The world's first global culture is born, not of conquest, but of curiosity.
The ocean has always been our mirror. When we stare into its surface, we see both the beginning and the end, reflections of who we were and ripples of who we might still become. For thousands of years, it has held our secrets in silence. But now, for the first time in human history, we're learning to listen again. This journey began with a question, a simple, impossible question. What if Southeast Asia was the true cradle of humanity? What if the first sparks of civilization flickered not in deserts or river valleys, but beneath the waves of the South China Sea? What if everything we know about the birth of culture, language, and imagination is just the visible half of a much deeper story, a story still sleeping beneath the tides? Over the last 10 chapters, we've dived through that silence. We began with the drowned world, the Sunda Shelf, once a vast and fertile continent, now hidden under 400 feet of ocean. We walked its vanished river valleys, traced its deltas and floodplains, imagined its forests filled with laughter and firelight. We followed the migration corridors that stretched from mainland Asia to Australia, the highways of prehistory, where the first sailors looked across an endless horizon and discovered that home could float. We saw how the coasts keep secrets, how the ocean, in taking the land, preserved it, how sonar and satellite maps now reveal rivers carved into the seafloor, proving that the landscapes of our myths were real. We entered the caves of memory, where handprints from 40,000 years ago still cling to stone like ghost signatures of human consciousness. We followed the genes that whisper of ancient encounters, humans and Denisovans meeting in the tropical dusk, leaving traces of each other in our blood. We listened to the languages that carried their memory, the Austronesian words that sailed across half the planet, linking Madagascar to Hawaii with syllables older than writing. We remembered the myths of the Great Drowning, stories of flood and rebirth passed down from generation to generation, not fiction, but fossilized memory of the rising sea. We explored the possibility of proto-centers, ancient hubs of life and trade along the vanished river systems of Sunda. We examined the contested stones of Gunung Padang, the mountain that refuses to stay silent, the place where science and myth meet like tide and shore. And we dreamed of an alternate world, a thought experiment where Sunda never drowned, where the first civilization grew not through conquest, but through connection. Now, as we rise from the deep, one truth becomes clear. This isn't just a story about the past. It's a story about the present and the choices we make for the future. Because the flood is coming again. The seas are rising. The coastlines are retreating. And just like our ancestors 10,000 years ago, we are standing at the edge of change. Our technology is powerful, but our memory is short. We build cities on the same deltas that once drowned, as if forgetting is easier than adapting. But the earth doesn't forget. The tides remember. To look at the drowned plains of Sunda is to look at a warning written in water. Civilizations are not eternal. They breathe, they rise and fall with the planet. And yet, that rise and fall is not tragedy. It is rhythm. The same rhythm that guided the first boats, the same rhythm that shaped the myths of every flood and rebirth. We are not separate from that rhythm. We are it. In the silence of the seafloor, we see the outline of our own reflection, a reminder that progress and loss are the same tide. Every generation inherits both the ruins and the possibility of those who came before. The question is not whether the sea will rise. It will. The question is whether we will rise with it. Perhaps that's why this story resonates so deeply across cultures, because it's not just about Southeast Asia. It's about all of us. Every continent has its drowned memory. Doggerland beneath the North Sea, Beringia between Asia and America, the Black Sea deluge that reshaped Europe. Each is a chapter of the same book, the Atlas of Forgetting. And every chapter asks the same thing. Can we learn from what the water took? If Sundaland truly was an early cradle, then its most powerful legacy is not its ruins, but its resilience. Those who lived there didn't vanish when the floods came. They adapted, they migrated, they carried their language, their art, their science with them, and from those fragments, new worlds were born. That's the real story of humanity, not the fall, but the continuity. We are the children of survivors, and survival, when done with memory, becomes wisdom. So what do we do with that wisdom now? First, we remember. We remember that the coastlines we see today are not permanent, that the map of the world has changed 1,000 times before, and will change again. We remember that our ancestors were not primitive, but profoundly adaptive, masters of tide and time. We remember that our myths were not fantasies, but coded messages from those who lived through catastrophe. And perhaps most importantly, we remember that the ocean isn't our enemy. It is our oldest teacher. Then, we act. We use the same technology that once helped us forget, the satellites, the sonar, the data, to remember. We scan the seafloor for traces of who we were. We preserve the caves before they fade. We protect the coastlines that are still alive. We tell these stories not as nostalgia, but as navigation, because to know where we're going, we must know where we began. Maybe the cradle of humanity was not one place at all. Maybe it was every place that taught us how to adapt, how to live with change instead of against it. If so, then the real first civilization wasn't built of stone or metal, but of understanding. And its ruins are not beneath the sea. They're within us, in our DNA, our myths, our art, our empathy. As we look into the deep, let's not only search for cities, let's search for ourselves. Imagine what we could achieve if we carried the wisdom of that drowned world into our own. A civilization that remembers its fragility and builds not for domination, but for balance. A world that treats the ocean not as border, but as bridge. That listens to the planet as carefully as our ancestors once listened to the tide. Maybe that's the final gift of Sundaland, a reminder that history isn't linear. It's tidal. It flows out, it returns, and even what's lost can be found again. So the next time you stand by the sea, anywhere in the world, pause for a moment, look beyond the horizon, and try to imagine the cities beneath your feet, the rivers that still flow unseen in the dark, the laughter that once echoed there. Because if you listen long enough, through the pulse of waves and the hiss of wind, you might just hear them, the voices of our ancestors calling softly from below. We were here before the flood. We built, we dreamed, we endured. Now it's your turn. And that is why this story matters. Not because it changes our past, but because it might just save our future. At Temporal Rift Tales, we don't ask what happened. We ask, what if? Because sometimes the only way to remember the truth is to imagine it first.